Hi, and welcome. Today I'm joined by Ronak from DatoCMS, and he's going to show us how you can set up DatoCMS, and then together we're going to show you how to connect it to Nordcraft and really simply build a content-driven website, combining those two. Ronak, thank you very much for joining me.
Happy to, anytime. Yeah, I mean, like you said, we're just going to do a very quick walkthrough of how Dato and Nordcraft could connect. And yeah, happy to show you guys around the platform.
So can you tell us a little bit, do a little bit of a show and tell of DatoCMS if there's anybody here who doesn't know it already?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm just going to go with the assumption that you'd be very familiar with a headless CMS in theory and how the concept works. So maybe what I'll do is just do a very quick 2-minute walkthrough of the system, kind of just highlighting how we're different from maybe a few other CMSs. And then I'll take a quick entry into our own DatoCMS website project in the CMS to walk through kind of like the partners and the showcase project and how we have that set up. And then we can swap over to Nordcraft to see how to set things up on your site. Works for you?
Excellent. Let's do it.
Nice. Let me go ahead and share this window. So just like in any other CMS that you'd be working with, you'd have your content for the editors, your schema, along with your asset management. So I've spun open a very quick demo project that's kind of powering this marketing website template that we have available for all users. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of every aspect, but a few things that I think would be worth mentioning is when we handle schema, you have all the blocks you would when working with a GraphQL API for text, for assets, for JSON, and so on. But we also have the concept of blocks, which are essentially these dynamic structures that you can embed into your models, and they don't show up in your schema. So you're not going to have a very sort of cluttered content view. And I'll show you what that looks like in the content editor in just a second. But this is what we use for things like addresses or CTA buttons or header variations that belong within other models, like on a landing page, for example. We also have a complete inbuilt asset manager along with folders. So for editors, you really don't need to work with multiple solutions, right? You have everything coming out of a single API. And on the content view, everything you have is neatly tucked into a sidebar that you can customize based on however you like it. But like I said, if we go into something like a homepage, this is where blocks really shine and give editors that kind of drag and drop experience. So for things like the hero or features, we don't have individual models, so we're not cluttering up the schema. You just have these sort of simple drag and drop blocks that you can move around to build your landing page the way you like. What I personally like a lot about working with Dato, at least, and I've worked with quite a few, is within blocks, you can also sort of create fields that are based off of plugins. So in this hero section, for example, editors have a very visual way to filter things out and see variations of their content in the way it's been set up on the front end. And we also have something that we call the structured text field, which personally is, I think I've used about 6 or 7 headless CMSs now. And this has to be one of my favorite because it's got a very familiar sort of work with, like if you've worked with Notion or with Ghost, it's really nice to work with the whole toolbar that gives you all the formatting options, but you also have slash commands if you want to work really quickly in Notion style, and you can also embed blocks and inline records. So it's really a flexible field. Not going to get into the details. Like if anyone wants to check it out, we have tons of content on this field. But maybe the last thing I'll focus on is our concept of plugins, right? So in a lot of headless CMSs, rightfully so, we disconnect the front end from the back end you're working with. But if you want all that flexibility in the CMS, there's this whole sort of library of plugins that we've created, but also plugins created by others in the community. So if you want conditional fields, if you want a website preview of how things look on staging before you publish, if you want to add, the SEO readiness from the old Yoast plugin back in the day, you have all those options to sort of customize the UI as much as you want. So yeah, that's like a super quick dive. There's all the other stuff with like workflow permissions, roles, tokens and stuff, but we won't get into all of the details. What I would like to do is kind of switch back into the context of a real project, right? So like we've been discussing, we've kind of got all of these partners that we work with across the world who've been building these really cool projects using DatoCMS. And on our side, we've tried to showcase these projects, just chronologically, whatever our partners publish. But what we've kind of been missing out on, and I think this would have been a cool way to show how Nordcraft could come in with some front-end editing as well, is we've just got this sort of dump of projects, right? We've not done a really good job filtering them out yet. Like, at least on the partners, we have like the filters for their location and their technology, but it would be cool to also have that view for the showcase. And what we've got, this is the real DatoCMS project, by the way. This is just exactly what our website is built on, where we have the partner program that have all of these partners. So it would be cool to kind of, on your side, see how easy things are to just structure them a bit better. So let me go ahead and off screen send you an API token that should work just for Nordcraft. Particularly for all the projects and partners. And yeah, we can see how things look on your side once we kind of want to get these into a front end.
Excellent. So I'm gonna pick that up. I got your key. Let's take a look at the front end here in Nordcraft. Here we are. It's getting the right sharing going. That's always a challenge. So at Nordcraft, we just released a brand new feature, which is in our API panel, we now have first-class support for GraphQL. And if you don't know what GraphQL is, we already did a video on that, and we'll link that in the description. But it's essentially a way of building APIs that's built on a schema. And what's great about that is that when DatoCMS goes and you build your schema in DatoCMS, it can actually communicate all of that to Nordcraft. So Nordcraft now knows exactly what data is available. And I'll show you how that works. So I'm going to go here in my project. I'm going to add a new, there we are. I'm going to add a new service and I'm going to choose DatoCMS. That's brand new with GraphQL that we've added them. And all I need to do here is paste in the token I got from Ronak here. It's going to make that connection, say, okay, connection established, this all worked. And now I can go and add a new API and use DatoCMS as a service. And what GraphQL does for us here, this is the new editor, you see. What it does is it sends a request to Dato and gets simply a schema of everything available. So I can say, if I want to show all the partners, I can see, well, there's a collection here called all partners. I'm going to pick that out. And now it tells me everything that I can do there. All the way as I can filter it, all the way I can limit the number of results. And I get to pick exactly the data I want. So I want an ID for each. I want a name. I definitely want a logo. Along with a logo where we URL down here somewhere. There we go. I want to know, let's say I want to know anything more? A website URL is probably a good idea, right? So now you can see as I'm selecting data here in the query editor of GraphQL, I actually get a live view of everything I'm getting over here. So it really is this sort of almost cafeteria shopping experience of like, oh, I want a little bit of that and a little bit of that. And you can kind of see how powerful that is, that anything you put in, you can query exactly that. And you're not doing what we call overfetching. And overfetching is when you get a ton of data you don't actually need on the page, and it ends up slowing down your website because you're fetching unnecessary amounts of data. But with GraphQL, you don't need to do that. You can say, I want exactly this. And again, you see it comes back really, really quickly. So because we have a very performant backend serving up this data as well. So now that I've fetched all my data and I have it available in my API, and we can just go and call this partners. Now I can start using that inside my my website. So I have this article tag here that I already put in and I pre-filled with some static data. And I'm going to right click and say repeat. And now I've got my partners API. And what repeat does is it basically says, give me a list or an array of items, and then I'm going to render this article for every single one of them. Now you can see now we have a whole list for every partner. And now inside of that, we can go and use the data from the API for every item in this repeat to actually fill out what this card should be. So let's start with the title. I'm going to use the FX button here again. And when we're repeating in Nordcraft, we have this repeat item. And again, we've got a ton of videos on how all this works. So if you're finding this confusing, just go and check out our video tutorials. They'll take you through how everything works. But in the repeat item here, we can get the name for every partner. So now that updates. For the image here in the article, actually, I don't think we got that yet. So we'll put in this one for logo. I think we forgot to bring in our partner.
We didn't have the projects.
No, we need to get the projects in. We'll do that after. Here for this, we can say the logo URL. And then now the logos are updated all the way down. No, let's go and add some more information, actually. So we'll go back to our GraphQL API and open up all partners. And we have here, I believe it's called featured projects. And then there is a main image and a URL. Sometimes you've got to go on a bit of a treasure hunt, especially if you didn't set up the schema, right? You don't know. But again, you just have to drill down. You just have to go and find it here. So it's really, really easy to do. And now you can see we got a featured project. We can see not every partner has a featured project in this data set. So actually what we're going to do, we're going to be a little bit cold, and we're going to say if you do not have a filtered project, you don't get to be in our demo tutorial here. So I'm going to add a filter, and on featured projects, I'm going to say exists, and I'm going to say true. So we only want the projects, we only want the partners where the featured project exists, right? And you can get sort of a little bit of a hint of how powerful like DatoCMS GraphQL API here, right? So we can start filtering out not just based on its own property, but whether that even has like a featured project, right? We're going through relationships and doing filtering right now. So it's an incredibly powerful way of accessing data, and it's really, really easy, right? So now we've got our main image. Now we know that every project has one. We can go and update this URL and then say featured projects. We'll just pick the first one and the main image and URL, right? And now we have our nice list of projects here all over, right? Every single one of them. I think we will be good citizens and make sure that our alt text for images is also updated. In this case, I am just going to make it, I think we'll be taking the name. So we need to make it something description, right? Featured project screenshot. So now the alt text for each image is going to say the name of the company, the agency or the partner in this case, and then featured project screenshot, right? So if people are using screen readers, they still understand what's going on. For the image, we'll do the same here. We'll do concatenate, and then we'll just say name and then space logo, right? So they know, oh, in this case, it's the Coco Kiko logo, and we have the same for each of them, right? So you can kind of see just how easy it is to actually go and update these things. Once you've got the data from Dato, like actually going and updating your site to using real data is like a breeze. What I generally like to do, actually, like we did it backwards, or maybe it's the normal way. But normally, actually, when I'm working, I work the opposite way around. I would actually go and fetch the data from Dato first before I even start designing the site. So that by the time I'm working out how everything should look, I'm working with the live data directly in Nordcraft. And I get to see essentially the final version with all the data and with everything as I'm designing, which is an incredibly powerful way of building, because you sort of avoid all these pitfalls of like, oh, I forgot that sometimes, people have long titles or whatever, right? Or, this problem of them having very different size logos. Maybe that's something I will deal with. I don't actually want to deal with that today, but maybe as a designer, I would want to do that and try and figure out, is there a way of normalizing that, or how do I want to deal with that? So this idea of having the data before you even start like working out the final design is like an incredible powerful tool. But we want to go a bit further today, don't we? We want to add a bit of filtering to actually make it nice to use. So how can we filter through our list here? Because we want to filter based on country, right? I can see that we have some locale information here. Oh, actually, that's not what we want to do. We're going to go into filters. And then we have some, under filters, we have some location filters we can do, where either all the locations are in or any in. And I think any in is the one we use. I think that means that a partner can have multiple locations, and if anyone is in this country.
Yes. Because some partners have quite a few.
Yes, exactly. Some of them have many offices, of course, right? And if we're searching for like the United States, we want to only, like, we want to pick any partner that has an office in the United States. So there's actually two ways we can do this, and they're a little bit different, and I'll show you why there's two. So the simple approach could be to just go and say, from this, we want to pick out all partners, all countries, right?
All countries.
I can go and pick out like ID, emoji, and name, right? And that gives me all countries, especially if I change the first here to, like, let's say 300. Then we're kind of sure to get them all. But now, technically, I don't think Dato has partner in every possible country.
Not every.
So, not every.
Yet. I think it's about like 35-ish or so.
Yeah. You're working hard on getting the full bingo card, but you're not quite there yet. So it might make sense to actually only show countries where you have partners. And so what we can do there is actually go the other way. So we can say, we'll add a new field and we'll go with partners again. And then in this case, we'll include locations. And under locations, we'll get ID, name, and emoji. And then we want to make sure to get all partners. I think you had 150. We'll just say 500 because that's the maximum limit. That won't actually be 500. That'll be 154, but that's fine, right? So now we do get some of them multiple times. That's fine, because what we're going to do is we're going to just filter them out so we have a single list. We'll still call this countries. That's fine. So in Nordcraft, we can just do a bit of data processing on our end. So we can go and say countries. And then we start with all our countries. And then we dive in and get all our partners, right? And then now we're getting into the programming part. We're going to map over that list. That means for every one of those, we're going to get out their locations. That gives us this like list of lists, right? We're going to flatten those. So we get a flat list that basically takes like a two-dimensional array, turns it into one. Then we're going to say unique. So we don't have any duplicates in this, right? Because the wonderful thing is each of those are exactly the same shape. So when we run unique on it, we're going to remove duplicates, right? And then finally, we're going to sort by a name, and it's going to be ascending. So let's give that a show. Argentina, Armenia, Australia, Austria. This looks right. So now we actually, instead of just pulling the list directly from the API, we actually grabbed out just the ones we need, right?
This is very easy to work with.
It's I mean, obviously, like anything, assuming you've done a programming. But again, we have lovely intros and videos for teaching you how all this works. I didn't go into too much detail about all this, right? But it's incredibly powerful. You can build all sorts of stuff. I mean, we built all of Nordcraft in itself. So there's really nothing that you can't do once you get into it. So now that we have this, we want to fill this into our select option here, right? And we're going to do that by actually just repeating this option element, just like we did with the articles. Now, we're leaving this empty one up there so you can uncheck countries to get all, right? And actually, maybe we should call it all. But we're going to repeat this one. And we're doing that just like we did before, but this time we're just picking our countries list, right? And so now we get a lot of Canadas. And we're just going to go in here. And again, this is the same step as before, but the only thing we changed is that like we're now doing it for select, right? And here we're going to go and take for each repeat item the emoji and then just concatenate. Concatenate is when you put two strings together. So we can do that. We're going to put a space in the middle And then the last part of the string is going to be the name, right? So I'm putting all these things together, the country flag, a little space, and the name. And that's called concatenate, right? So now we got a list of all our countries. And the last thing I want to do is on an option, you need to have a value attribute because that's the actual thing you select from this. And in this case, the value is going to be the ID because the ID is actually in Dato the thing we end up filtering on. We don't filter on Argentina. We filter on, or Canada, or whatever. Argentina, I think it was. We filter on the ID, right? So that's the thing we want to know. And I already cheated and baked something from home, which is that when you change the select, we're going to update our variable with this new ID. And this is a variable I have here. So we have this variable country. Whenever we select, we can see it starts out as none. But if I go here and select like Belgium, you can see that now my country down here has a code. And that is the code for Belgium, right? And now if I go in under partners, I can go and add a new filter on locations. And that is, I believe we said any in. And right here, because this is dynamic and changes all the time, I want to create a variable in GraphQL for this. And variables in GraphQL are kind of like placeholders. So you're saying, I'm going to say a country code, right? I'm going to create a variable called country code. And then here I can define how I bind those. And GraphQL variables are part of that whole spec. They're not the same as Nordcraft. They're similar in the sense that it's a name that kind of covers for a value. And in this case, our value is the one we get from country, right? And so now we see, okay, when I choose Belgium, we actually only get these. And in Nordcraft, of course, everything kind of updates automatically. So when you have auto fetch on an API, that means that anytime any of the data it needs to call the request, anytime it changes, it'll automatically refetch. You can turn it off if you want for some reason, but in most cases, this is kind of what you want. So as I'm changing this to like Canada, I'm going to get our Canada, everything from Canada. Let's go and try something that has a bit more. United States. I'm only seeing one though.
Oh, because I think we've not pulled out for all projects, have we?
Have we not? All partners, location, any in?
Maybe if we try for Italy, because I know that that's where we're from. So we've got quite a few of the early projects in.
Always good to have there's definitely not enough here. So let's see what's happening. Partners. I am getting one partner where featured project exists. Oh, do we think that maybe there's not enough featured projects? What happens if I clear this one? Yeah, I think we just don't have as many featured projects as we liked.
Oh, I may be at fault here. Can we change the query from featured project to showcase project?
Oh, yes.
What does that give us?
So you're saying we should, we'll get rid of our featured, and then it's called all referencing showcase
projects.
Right. And we're just going to get the first one, right? And we want don't think we need the ID. So we want a project screenshot and URL.
We have main image.
Yes.
For here.
Let's go and check. See if that works. So let's go here and on source, instead of our featured project, we will say all references showcase, project screenshot, and URL. Oh, that is much better.
There we go. We don't need to blame any of the two platforms. As usual, we can blame marketing. You're very welcome.
Nope. So I'm missing one here. Yes. Excellent. Right. So now we can see as we're driving into these different countries, as we're switching around, now we actually get to see the proper list of projects here. Yes. And we should probably do a fallback at some point for these before we release this to the whole world. But yeah, here we have it. And Italy, quite a good turnout. Now, obviously, I would love to go and show at a later point to dive into how to do things like pagination, etc. We'll launch videos on that coming. I would also really love to dive into blocks at some point for DatoCMS, because I think that is a really interesting feature. And I think with Nordcraft, you're going to be able to build a lot of really cool things with that. So hopefully that's something we'll get to do in an upcoming video. But I think this is enough for an intro. Thank you very much, Ronak, for joining us and for coming along and showing us how DatoCMS works.
Happy to.
I'm looking forward to doing many more videos about Nordcraft and DatoCMS in the future.
Likewise, looking forward to those.
And for everyone listening, make sure to obviously like and subscribe, but also go check out DatoCMS and Nordcraft. There's a link to both in the description. And go and play around with it. Go and try it out and see what you can build. And make sure to always share it, because we love to see it. Thank you very much.